This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Imagine if you were a wealthy business owner in the 1850s and you had nothing better to do other than make a bet with your friends and family that you could illegally ship slaves from Africa to Mobile, then burn and sink your ship to hide the evidence from authorities who got wind of your scheme. Sounds like a synopsis from a movie or a plot from a mystery thriller? Well, in actuality, it's the backdrop behind a little-known historical event in Mobile, Alabama. We're talking about Africatown. And there are several wonderful organizations, community groups, and individuals working to preserve the legacy of Africatown, as well as a number of efforts to revitalize the community. But tonight on The Aware Show, we're going to feature one of those groups as we highlight the extraordinary story about Africatown, its history, its legacy, and its courageous people. And joining me on the phone to do it, we have Dr. Sharon Ingram. She's the CEO and chairman of the Alabama-Benin Trade Forum. And here in our Aware studios, we're joined by Henry Haseeb on my right. He's the vice president of the Alabama-Benin Trade Forum. And on my left, we have none other than Elder Makinde A, Gbolahan, Alabama-Benin Trade Forum as well. Thank you all for joining us for this Aware Show. Thank you for having us. This is going to be an exciting Aware Show. Glad to have you there, Dr. Ingram. We'll get to you in a moment. But first, for our viewers, a special treat. A gift from Makinde to you from Africatown.
Tumbamile, tumbamile oba, tumbamile, tumbamile oba, tumbamile, oh, tumbamile, tumbamile. Tumbamile oba. So this is a song of thanks and praise and sung in the Yoruba language of Nigeria.
Very good. And this was written by you.
By me.
It's a very special treat for us. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you very much.
Now, we actually go back a long way back in the days when I was a news director and public affairs director at WBLX AM and FM here in the market. And so to see you again after all these years and for this occasion to celebrate African American history and culture and to do it by highlighting Africatown is a special treat.
But it's also a treat to see you again after so many years, and I am very honored to be on your show.
Very good. And also with you, Haseeb, we're so glad to have you joining us, as well as Dr. Ingram. We know that you all have been tirelessly working to preserve the history and the legacy of Africatown. And we're going to get to you all and what you've been doing with the Benin African Trade Forum in just a moment. But I want to talk a little bit about the history of Africatown. We started off with it at the top of our show as we tried to just kind of capture the audience by giving them a very brief overview of the historical beginnings of Africatown. But I'm turning to you now, Makinde. Just really dive in there and give us the background.
Okay, your statement about this scenario that you was laying out. Slavery had ended in 1859, and this bet was the cause of 100 souls being snatched from their homeland, carried across the ocean, and brought to what we call Magazine Point, it's now called Africatown. And it is really a fascinating story of people surviving and people living and people remembering. And I think it's a privilege to be working with Dr. Ingram and Brother Haseeb and trying to preserve this history, because when the people seek to define themselves or get direction, they have to re-identify and reclaim their heritage and their history. And that's what this story is about. The Clotilda was a ship that was about the fastest schooner that they had in the Gulf area at that particular time. And it was a bet by Foster, the ship owner, the shipyard owner, and the Mayer brothers, very wealthy families in Mobile. In an argument and a debate, like you said, they decided that they'll see could they still go to Africa, acquire slaves, and the federal patrols was looking out for that kind of thing because it was still trying to be taking place here in the Gulf. And they made a bet that they could still go over there and get slaves and bring them back to America. So that's what this story is about. It's about a people surviving that. It's about a people striving. And it's about us remembering that sacrifice and that survival that they went through.
And this thing really happened. I mean, it sounds, like I said, like a plot in a movie or something like that, but this really happened. And so we know that this is Mobile's history. What do we know happened after that? There's some other things that came into play where these people were kind of left once they were brought here.
Well, yes, they was left, and because the feds had got wind that this was taking place. And so they was left, I don't know if it's Canebrake or Mahany Bridge or one of those named little islands. They was left there for a while. Then they was carried further up in Mississippi and Mobile County and put to another place. And then they came and they took the Clotilda and they burnt the ship to hide and cover up what they had done, because there was severe penalty if they was caught bringing slaves into this country. The people, eventually, I think in your introduction, you were saying about when the Confederate left this area, how happy they was, that they was able then to start building a community, coming together and building the community. And that community is called Africatown USA today, and it was Plateau magazine point at that time. And they had many families, and they was builders, they had trades, they owned their own businesses, they had bricks, they made their own bricks, they made their own shingles to go on their houses, they was fishermen, and they practiced the art of naturopathic herbal medicines, the natural medicines that they used to stay healthy. And so this was a time when they kept a lot of their traditions, a lot of their foods that they remembered. And the word gumbo is an African word, but it's a mixture of okra and other kinds of things to make a gumbo soup. So they remember a lot of the foods and the traditions that they maintained and preserved. And we have an Afro Shay that we used to have many, many years ago when we first started the relatives from Africa who have a lot of their people buried here in Plateau area, in the African Cemetery. They used to come over every year, and every year we used to have a big celebration. But when they first came over, the Africans wanted to apologize for being involved in the process of helping enslaving their people. But they was caught up in a system themselves that was actually forced upon them to participate. So we got together and we said that what we was going to do, we was going to reach across the water and join hands together as a people. And even though this was a terrible legacy, we was going to use this legacy to build a community.
Awesome. And in that, a lot has come about in recent years with Africatown. There are different organizations, as we mentioned, who have done different things and have been trying to basically preserve the heritage and the history and to make it a really big deal, because it really is a really big deal. And so that's where your organization has come into play.
Yes. I was just reflecting on some of the comments there, which is very true, and I was thinking about the great historian, Mr. Henry Williams, that really gave birth to the newer generation, because people say, wait a minute, you wasn't born back then. How do you know all of this stuff? Well, our great historian, Mr. Henry Williams, inspired the mayor of Pritchard. It wasn't mayor at that time, but John Smith. And John Smith, after he became the mayor of Pritchard, he began to work with other government agencies and other people in the community to give us some recognition again of our heritage. Matter of fact, he traced his history back all the way back to Benin. And today, John is buried over in Benin. So we were able to take his ashes as a respect of returning home. Through that effort, John led a delegation in 2005 over to Benin, Africa. And we all went. I was able to go on with that delegation. And we went to Africa, and it was a new beginning for us because, you know, we had a Western mind, and I had never been outside the United States before. And when I got to Africa, it was kind of shock. And not that all the bad things that you see, that there are people in Africa, there's parts of Africa that's as modern as America. But, you know, we were used to seeing pictures that was portrayed on TV that wasn't necessarily the truth. Mm-hmm. So what we learned when we went to Africa, that they showed us where the slaves would leave and exit Benin. And there's a city that's called Ouida. And in Ouida, and this is the city that John is buried because that's where he traced his family back, and he still got family members over there now. He traced it back to Ouida, and in Ouida there's what's called a gate of no return. And they showed us that the African would take their last wash off before they would be headed to the ship. So a lot of times the slaves would be put under houses, and I've seen those houses. Matter of fact, we had a house sort of remind me of that I grew up in, and they were off of the ground. But they only sit about so high off of the ground, and all the slaves wasn't in the house, they was under the house. Mm. So, you know, after weeks, they would be defecated and everything on themselves. So they would wash them off before they moved them to the big ship to bring them to America. Mm-hmm. Now, in celebration of that in 2005, John Smith led us, a delegation of us, over to do a reconciliation. And in the country of Benin, in the city of Cotonou, they have now what's called a gate of return. So we had the gate of no return, and now we go over to celebrate the gate of return. And this is what a lot of descendants of the American slave is not aware of, that there's people in Africa that wants them, they don't have to go back to stay to Africa, but want them to know that they're welcome back home.
That's really awesome. Dr. Ingram, we know that you're joining us on the line. Dr. Ingram, once again, is the CEO and chairman of Alabama-Benin Trade Forum. Tell us a little bit more about some of the inner workings right now of what you all have done to go back and get some of the history of Africatown and bring it to the forefront.
Thank you, Dee Dee. One thing I want to bring to light and add to what Makinde has said is that just trying to, so we want everyone to picture what had happened to the, I like to say Africans, I don't like to use the term slaves, to the Africans that became enslaved. When they were, imagine being in your homeland and a group of people would come with guns and knives and swords to put around you up as if like you were cattle. And what they would do is they would, whomever they caught, they would put them in little shacks, as we would call them, little tin sheds, and they would keep them in there for about 30 days with nothing but bread and water. So whomever survived, those were the ones that they brought, took to the ship and brought to America. You can only imagine this was children and women and men, but prior to them going through the door of no return, as Mr. Haseeb had eloquently pointed out, is there's a tree, and it's still in Ouida, that they would make them go around 3 times. And the purpose of that tree was that they were to forget their culture, forget their religion, and forget their homeland. So they had to do this ritual that their captors had made them to do. And once they came to Mobile, they tried to recreate their homeland. In one of the areas, as Mr. Makinde stated, magazine point, but there's another area called Plateau. and I actually visited Plateau in West Benin when I was there. So they continue to speak their native languages. They use a lot of African gardening, as Mr. Makinde alluded to, in their own cooking techniques. So they tried within themselves to try to remain as close as possible in touch with their heritage and their culture. And one thing that we want to note is that they tried everything possible to avoid any white people. And that was because that was their captors, and they was very much afraid of them. And so what we have done with the Alabama-Benin Forum is to make sure that that America, the world, is educated about the true history of what happened between Africa and ultimately in Mobile, Alabama. Most people don't even know, Dee Dee, that Alabama is the last place that the Africans was brought to become enslaved. And so our vision is to make sure we educate our people and also to make sure that we don't return back to that type of environment or that type of mindset.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that input, Dr. Ingram, adding to Makinde and what he had said earlier. And I want to come back to you because, Makinde, you had also mentioned that there has been this, and that's what you all are doing, is this reconciliation now on behalf of Africa. But I also want to, as we talk about that going forward, I want to make sure that we kind of wrap up the story of the Clotilde. Whatever happened to the brothers and Captain Foster after what they did?
Well, there was no trial. There was no punishment for that family. That family is still very wealthy in Mobile. And so a lot of the exploitation of not paying people wages, people become extremely wealthy. And that money been passed down from one generation to the next generation. So there was no penalty that was imposed upon them for that particular act.
And so going forward, since we know what happened to them, we know that those who were survivors of Africatown picked up the pieces as best they could and began to put their lives back together again with their skills and their labor and the things that they knew from Africa and from life itself. And one of those, you getting ready to say something. I'm getting ready to zoom in and focus on Cudjoe Lewis.
Go ahead.
But I don't want to take you from where your frame of mind was thinking.
Go
okay.
ahead. Right,
one of the last survivors, or the last survivor that's most talked about in all of this has been Cudjoe Lewis.
Well, he was a tremendous man of fortitude and vision and a compassion for his community. He was a leader in his community. And he was one of the pillars of the community that held the community together. We had Pojo Allen, we have many others who was also involved at that particular time. But there was a very unique group of people, and like Dr. Ingram said, they desired to hold on to much of their culture as they possibly could hold on to. Because when you live in a predominant culture that's contrary or different from yours, if you don't pass that down, and one institution that they was very much involved in is the church, to try to preserve their heritage and history. And Union Baptist Church, as was established in 1870, as a matter of fact, the school that they opened, the one-room school, also at one time was being taught in Union Baptist Church. They believed in education. They believed that they was going to try to make a better way for their children, and they was willing to sacrifice for that purpose and for that cause.
And then there's also Mobile County Training Center. You might as well go ahead and mention that as well as you speak about education.
Yes, that was a part of the whole effort. Because before they got a building to accommodate a whole lot of classrooms, they was operating out of Union Missionary Baptist Church. And I think it was also the Hope Baptist Church. They was operating out of that. And eventually they finally got another building and established that school. And I think it's one of the oldest schools in Mobile County. And so they believe that education and preserving their heritage and history and maintaining that cohesiveness was key to being on one accord. And I think that's a big problem that we suffer today because we don't embrace our culture. We don't understand the importance of the lessons that it has to teach us or the wisdom that's in that culture.
And I think that groups like what we're representing here tonight, they're trying to change that.
Yeah.
And so as we zoom in and focus a little bit more on what you all are doing, tell us.
What we're trying to do now is bring Africa, and Benin in particular. The president over there, when we met in 2005, and then we went back in 2008, I believe it was, he says to us at the time that Benin is the key to coming home, to coming back to Africa. And if you look at how the country is shaped, it's shaped like a key. So I say, well, maybe that's. So he says, this is your key to coming home. You come in Africa, doing Benin, and then Africa will open up to you. And so we've been working with the country of Benin and the country of Togo and Ghana and Nigeria and all the West African countries in there to try to bring about this reconciliation. There's opportunities for the descendants that came from Africa economically, culturally. All of these things can be achieved. The problem that I've seen is educating the descendants in America about their descendants in Africa, and we hope to in the future be able to take groups back over. Our overall vision is to get a ship big enough to take 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, and let's sail back where the ship was brought over here, that we came on a ship. Let's go back home on a ship.
Okay, and of course, you know, I'm just going to be devil's advocate for a second, because you're going to have factions that are just, they're going to have views that some would say are ignorant views.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They don't want to go there because, and I don't want to get too far sidetracked with this, but they don't want to go there because they don't want what they might fear what would happen.
On TV, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was afraid too. Mm-hmm. You know, you got that little fear in you because you've seen all this stuff on TV, and I had never been outside of the country. Once you get to Africa, that fear will subside. Now, I would love to, and I hope I'm blessed before I leave here, to be able to go to Africa, to stay over there 6 months, and maybe to come back to America 6 months, and maybe sometime go stay a year or two, and then come back to America. Mm-hmm. We're not saying you got to go back to Africa like some of people are saying,
that you're going to get left over there.
But you need to see where you come from.
Right.
Well, you need to also understand that the people who created astronomy, the people who did irrigate the Nile, people who built pyramids, the people who had first established medicine, dentistry, all of those people, those trades, we was not a people who was doubt the skills of civilization when we came here. Mm-hmm. We came here knowing these things. So we didn't have no need to be civilized, even though that's the concept that people say. But if you see Mount Kilimanjaro, if you see the beautiful mountains and the valleys, if you see the boulevards with palm trees and 6 and 7 lanes, see, we only see Africa out of the eyes of someone who is trying to distort. But we have many people who vacation in Africa because it's the most beautiful place in the world.
It is.
And to rediscover that place and to reclaim that rich heritage. Because when civilization first began, it began on the African continent. Christianity did not come from Europe. It came from Africa. So many people have a lot of misconceptions because of what we've been told and what we've been taught. But all of that is just propaganda.
Dee Dee, I'd also like to add, to remind our viewers that, you know, slavery officially started in August in 1619. The first ship that came to America docked in Jamestown, Virginia. And something that's worth noting, that was 1 year prior to the Pilgrims landing. So we all hear about Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims started this, but the Africans were already here when the Pilgrims landed, and it officially ended December 6th in 1865. So that's 240 46 years that we were in bondage and that we were forced into servitude as slaves. And so it's very, very important, as Mr. Makinde and Mr. Haseeb has pointed out, that we educate our children for the next generations and the next generation, so that they will know that they came from royalty. As Mr. Makinde just eloquently said, when they came, they were the doctors. They were the mathematicians. They were the sculptors. And so the propaganda in the United States via the media has most people, and including blacks, African Americans, to believe that Africa is this famine, disease country, that Nigeria exists because of oil. And we need to change the narrative. We need to change the landscape on that, so that that the United States and the world would know that Africa is gorgeous. It is beautiful. It is the most beautiful continent in the world. And as Mr. Henry just stated, I mean, when you go there, your first trip there, you're in awe. Because we, in this Western mindset, we've been fed all this propaganda all of our lives, and you go there, and it's like, oh, this is like New York, this is like California. They're more advanced than we are. As a continent, they're way more advanced technologically than we are. So we want this forum, that's part of what we're doing is to change the mindset of people when it comes down to what Africa and Africatown really represent and what the culture really is all about.
And I'm glad you went there, Dr. Ingram, because that was where I was going next, is to try to just zoom in and focus more. We're talking about Africatown and we're talking about Africa and that sort of thing, but I really want to talk about specifics of what you all are doing on the ground right now to make everything that we're talking about come off the pages of history and into a legacy that we can leave for our children and our children's children.
Well, specifically.
Well, thank you, Dee Dee, for that. One of the trips that I just returned from West Africa in Benin, and I met with all of the government officials, from the newly elected president to all of the cabinet members there, and we have assigned a partnership agreement with them that we would act as the clearinghouse basically for all of West Africa. And what that would do is that for businesses, public and private partnership, but businesses in Africa that want to do business in the United States, then they can come through us as a forum. And what we would do is we would pair them with businesses here in the United States that to receive their goods. And also, if there are businesses here in the United States, we want to encourage them also to do business in Africa. So we want this to be a bilateral agreement and approach. And we're spending a lot of our time in educating locally, and now thanks to AWARE, that we will be able to educate nationally about what Africatown is and what we need to do, some of the challenges that we face because of the propaganda and from the lack of support from the public, from the descendants of Africa. When I say descendants, I'm talking about all of us as descendants from Africa. That Africa is very, very important, and something that we don't understand and we don't talk about is the fact that Africa is the number one, is the richest continent as it is in the world, and also that everything that we use in our everyday life, 99% of all raw material comes out of Africa. So we are working on trying to get businesses that will go into Africa to help build processing machinery, so that those businesses in Africa, they want an American presence in Alabama, specifically in Africatown, to create jobs, to create opportunities, to create a cultural universities, basically, technological centers. So we're on the ground, working up, trying to get our people to understand the importance of the connection. That's where we have to start, is what the connection is between Africa and Alabama and Africa and Africatown. That's where we lose, that's where we have the disconnect, because most African Americans, the black, don't think that Africa is a priority.
I think that
I see.
I would totally agree with her, because we are trying to make that connection economically, culturally, and spiritually. There's a website you can go to called African Growth and Economic Act, and you can look at all the different products that the African have that they would like to try to create trade with these different products. So that's an act that the United States Congress of the United States gave an exemption to the South Sahara countries that they could ship their duties in. And Tshirt and Tuskegee was very fortunate. They voted to set up trade-free zones where you could ship products into these zones without duty. And so those two areas was very, very on the cutting edge of trying to establish this relationship, the economic relationship. We invest our money in a lot of things, but we don't invest our money in the things that going to benefit not only us, but the next generation. If you spend all your resources with someone else, then you can expect for your house to be raggedy. So we have to learn to invest in the things that going to help build and maintain our community. And a lot of the social ills that we are struggling with is because of lack of resources.
I see.
And Dee Dee, I also like to add regarding AGOA, which is the African Growth Opportunities Act. That was enacted in 2000 into law under President Bill Clinton. And as of March of this year, there are over 8,000 products that can be brought into the United States duty-free. And for our viewers, duty-free is the tariff that's associated with when you're shipping goods, shipped here to the United States, that they charge you a duty. Well, the African Growth Opportunities Act allowed that they would get preferential treatment for countries in Africa for their goods that were stamped in Africa coming into the United States, because the duties could be $30,000, $50,000. So for a very small farmer or even a very small business owner in Africa, that would just wipe them out completely, or they just would not be able to ship their goods here. And one of the things I also want to highlight is that the World Conference of Black Mayors, whose president is former mayor of Tuskegee, Mayor Johnny Ford. He's also been very instrumental with our working with us with Africa. Tuskegee does have a free trade zone also. And so we have been working side by side, hand in glove with Tuskegee, and also to make sure that we economically, that both Tuskegee and Africatown and Mobile both benefit economically through the AGOA Act. And when we talk about bringing products in, we have the port in Mobile, Alabama. It is the third largest deep water port in the United States. So it can accommodate, it's about 16 berths. So it can accommodate a lot of goods coming from Africa. And you was asking what are some of the things we're doing on the ground, because previously the ships have had to go down to Jamaica and come back up and then come into the United States. So we're working so we have a direct path from Africa to the United States, and once those products come into the United States, then they can be shipped out to via trucking companies. They'll be shipped out to various business owners in the United States. So there's so much opportunity there. It's so much opportunity for Black America, as Makinde said, economically, just the cultural awareness of it. There's so many opportunities that we are missing, and it's very important that we connect the dots.
I see, and that's what you all are trying to do. You mentioned Mayor Ford of Tuskegee. I know you've mentioned former Pritchard Mayor John Smith. And also people don't know that Senator Michael Figurs, a former representative
Michael
who's
Figurs
deceased,
was
is
very involved in
in
trying to establish this.
Henry Williams.
Henry Williams and Representative Bill Clark. All of these was instrumental in
Mayor
in
Neal
bringing this
also
together,
in Tuskegee was very instrumental in trying to help with this vision to bring it about.
So in some regards, some of this vision has come to pass, even though some of these people are not amongst us to see it come to fruition. And then in other regards, there's still much more, as we see, to do.
There's a lot of work to do. For instance, a lot of the historical sites need to be highlighted for the tourists can come, because one of the visions was to start an African market where people can come in and see crafts being done, and they can come in and see a lot of the things, food, and have restaurants and hotels. So the possibility is there. The vision is there. But the resources and the organization and the structure and the community support is what we are trying to utilize this service that this platform that you are allowing us to speak to those people to recognize that this is an avenue for economic development, for culture awareness, and for reclaiming something that was actually very valuable to us that we lost.
Let's talk
Dee Dee,
about.
also, we want to build an African museum.
Okay.
In Africatown. We want this museum to represent our ancestors. We want this museum to be one that people from all over the world will be excited about coming to visit this museum. That in itself, the tourism will create much needed resources and an economy boost in Africatown, in the Mobile area also. We should have, I know we have the African American Museum in D.C., but we need a museum of that magnitude in the Mobile area, in Africatown, so that the community can showcase their pride and their heritage of our ancestors. And so that's something we're really working on. And of course, that's going to take a lot of financing, a lot of public-private partnerships, and we're looking for all of that. We're looking for investors. We're looking for, we want to partner with schools. We want to partner with other institutions to make this museum to become a reality.
I see. And so when we talk about Africatown, we've mentioned Plateau and Magazine Point and some other. What particular area are we talking about? Because this is bigger than just that.
Well, there is a designated park that's been set aside and to be marked as a historical designated area. But we cannot just keep it in that part of the county. We have to also take in the communities that also need to be a vibrant part of this. But the museum, we also was looking at a park. We were looking at a African park where there would be boats and all kinds of things to be there, be a place where people can go and relax and enjoy themselves. We were looking at a replica of the Clotilda to be a part of a museum as well. So we do have a lot of plans that have been discussed over the years about how to bring this about. The vision is here. The commitment, Dr. Ingram have been very leading out now and been committed. Lately, she had picked up the torch to move this idea forward, and she had went over to Africa and visit, like she said, and met a lot of the people. But we don't have enough organization.
That's what I wanted to get to. What are some of your challenges?
Right. That's
we've
one
been
of the
kind of
challenges.
off and on hinting about them, but what are some of the challenges, Haseeb?
Well, one thing I wanted to mention, just so we'll know that we do have a new Africatown bridge. over there too, so you can enter Africatown through the Africatown Bridge.
Gotcha.
It's named
Thank you
after
for putting that in there.
But some of the challenges that we have, one of them, as we said before, is education of the people. To know their history. That's a big issue, because I think once people know more about where they come from, then they'll begin to look at it different. Economics. There's so many economic opportunities for us to invest in Africa, and for Africa to be able to invest in us over here. But we're not connecting the dots, and that's what we're trying to do, is connect the dots. It's going to take monies in order to bring these things about. But so we encourage our people to get together with their few pennies and nickels. They understand that we're not the super rich, as you said. We can't sit back and make bets like that. But we can pool our resources so we can invest in Africa, and the return, I can guarantee, would be far greater than the investment.
You don't want to make a bet, but if you build it, they will come. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. That's right.
Dee Dee, also, I just want to just interject this here. This is larger than the forum, and it's going to take all of us to bring these ideals and goals to fruition. We have to become more organized in order to make sure that this it is a reality, and that is one of our challenges, because this is, so many things that we're talking about. This is far greater than the Alabama-Benin Trade Forum, and it's going to take all of us to come together in unity, to operate as a unit, as one, to proceed further with this. And if I may, I would like to just also to highlight next year, 2018, it'll be 153 years. And what we're working on is for the Juneteenth celebration, which is not really embraced in Mobile the way that it should be. They have celebrations in Pritchard, but we want this to be a celebration all over Alabama. We would love to see Juneteenth as a national holiday. To celebrate our history. We're not. Yes, it was a dark time in America's history, but this is still our history, and it's something that we don't want our people to be ashamed of. This is our history. So the entire diaspora is more than just the United States. We're talking about the Caribbean. We're talking about Liverpool. We're talking about Asia. Everywhere, every country in the world is part of the diaspora. So we want 2018 to be the largest gathering of the African diaspora in the city of Mobile, Alabama.
That's huge.
And we're inviting the world to come and see what Mobile has to offer in terms of Africatown. Come and see, experience the heritage, experience the culture, experience the possibilities, experience the flavor of what Africatown is made of, and where we come from, where we're going. And I have to keep going back to our generations of our children. If we don't teach them now, if we don't preserve the history now, sooner or later it's going to be forgotten, and we don't want that to happen.
The resistance, we need to look at people who survived all was thrown at them, people who survived all of that. So we are celebrating their survival, and that characteristics of being willing to sacrifice for the next generation, that unselfishness, that commitment to a vision and a future and having hope. In spite of what they was going through, they still sung songs. In spite of what they were going through, they still didn't let anything just rob them of their joy. So we wasn't celebrating because we was in trouble. We were celebrating in spite of the trouble we was in. And so that's the tenacity of a people. And that's what we want to capture in our young people. In spite of what challenges you have, you set goals. You strive for those goals. You strive to reach them. But making people aware of the beauty of their heritage, because it's been so distorted, is one of the key challenges we have. And when it comes to when it comes to the culture exchange that we had, we used to have 2 and 3 blocks of African art and culture dancers and Afro shades where food and celebration was. I was down in South Carolina, and they used to have a group of African dancers come over. And every time that the African dancers come over, the vineyards where they went was packed, because those brothers had all kind of costumes on, and them drums was kicking it, and them beautiful women was dancing. But there was just a whole lot of celebration. They was on stilts. They was dancing on stilts. So there's so much
festival, a carnival.
creativity. Yeah, so much creativity when we come together and celebrate ourselves. And we're not holding any bitterness. This is not against anybody. We're just struggling to trying to make things better for those who are here. So it's not a struggle against anybody. It's a struggle to survive.
I see what you're saying.
Well, you know, I was just thinking as you said that, we had some presidents. I remember President Bush being one, because they highlight him. You can understand now how he got into the spirit. A man that probably couldn't dance, as we saw during his inauguration, but when he went to Africa, he was in it because he was able to get to the spirit. So that's what I'm saying. If you go there and experience that spirit, you'll never be the same.
And what did you say about going to Africa and the dancing and the singing and the music?
I was saying that there was a saying that they kind of say this sometimes to make us understand just how much we have lost. When they catch the plane and they go to Africa, some of the brothers be on the tarmac and they be playing the African drums. And when you pass by and you didn't get in, there was no response from you, they said, well, yeah, he have lost his soul in America.
Uh-oh. and before we're gonna do a little something special for our viewers in just a moment. But speaking of lost souls, but certainly not forgotten, souls in the grave sites in Africatown. Can we just mention them a little bit as we talk about what is there and what's left in terms of having actual, not just proof that they were there and that they are still there, but that these people, their lives, their legacy lives on even though they're there resting.
It does, and when the African families come over, they always come to visit their loved ones in the cemetery. The cemetery is being kept up and preserved so that we can visit, and so some of it is being restored because some of it had at one time was going through some ruins, and so it's a lot of focus is on making sure that we respect those who have went before us and the legacy they have left.
In the old Plateau Cemetery of Africatown's graveyard, and I understand we also pulled up some images of Cudjoe Lewis's monument and his site that we had as well in remembering him, the last survivor of the Clotilda as well. You brought some musical instruments here on a more upbeat, that's the photo that we had of him and his wife. But here on our set of Aware, we have the opportunity to have some instruments here that Makinde is going to introduce us to and perhaps play as he did at the top of the show.
This is called the Karumba. Now we call it xylophone here in America, but we have been playing music. Now music, they say, the kind of music you play determines the health of a community. If you got sick music that's saying sick things, then you got a sick community. But if you got music that's talking about healthy things, and then that reflects a healthy community. So this is called a xylophone. And that's how that sounds.
I love it. And this particular instrument?
Okay, this is called an African music box.
Okay.
That's how that sounds.
I love
Well,
it.
I would say this much: my soul is not dead.
Neither is mine, because I was about to get up to the 2/4 beat. That's wonderful. Music is universal. It's a universal language.
It's a universal
Yes.
language where people celebrate. And they say this, to communicate, it connects us to each other. And it also connects us to our Creator. And so music has been a very instrumental part of lullabies when we're born, and funeral processions when we die. So music is something that accomplishes us all through life. Mm-hmm. When we celebrate, when we do things, so music is just an intricate part of who we are.
And so since we're celebrating, talking about Africatown and all that other good stuff, I appreciate you for bringing and highlighting music here as we do that. So that's just a wonderful way to just work that in. I love it a whole lot.
Thank you very much.
We know that you brought something as well.
Well, this was one of the T-shirts that we sold during the Africatown event here, and this has got a picture of Cudjo Lewis and his wife, and a replica of the ship that brought us over here.
Okay.
And on the back of it, it's got some of the ancestries of how it went down. And some of these people we did get a chance to meet of Cudjo Lewis and those people. A lot of them, well, we got a younger generation, but a lot of them now is deceased that knew the history. And we have to learn how to preserve our history.
Gotcha. And Dr. Ingram, as we get ready to close here, do you have any closing comments on the vision that you have for Africatown and the forum?
Yes, I thank you again, Dee Dee. I was thinking about when Mr. Henry was talking about our history and what we have in our office. I thought maybe he was going to bring that out, but we actually have a Benin museum within our office.
Oh, nice.
So
you guys are serious.
I let Mr. Henry discuss that more because him and his wife painstakingly put that together.
Well, yes, we do, and it kind of tells some of the history of our people in Africa. We went over there in some of the festivals that they have, and it also shows the progress that we made in America, to show that because we even given a bad light in America. So some of the great inventions and all, we highlight those things. But everyone's welcome to come and see. We got a one room, and it'll take you an hour to get through it.
Really?
Yes.
That's really awesome.
Yes, we got a lot of
good
good information.
So where will we see you all in the next few years?
Well, I envision us trying to make this connection. If we don't take the ship in the next few years, we definitely going to take a plane. I said if we can't get a ship load, we'll get a plane load.
Or train. No, just kidding.
Just to be able to see, because the more people that we're able, and we're talking about the ancestry, other people visit Africa all the time. And when they do, they come back. All races of people. I met over there, and people come every year. They come back. They pay their own money to go back to Africa because of the experience they get. So if they can get it, we can get it too.
I have not been there, but it's on my bucket list.
All right.
And Dee, also,
go ahead, Dr. Ingram.
Mention here, you was talking about our vision. The Alabama-Benin Trade Forum, what our vision of the African Economic Initiative and Africatown is really to work to promote innovative immigration solutions. When I say that, I'm talking about to have our African brothers and sisters to come here to the United States, and those of us to go to Africa, and then to work for policy for Africa's participation in the global economy, because that's very, very important. And some of our initiatives include, a collaborative alliance with all government institutions, whether it be Africa and here in the United States, obviously with businesses and corporate leaders. We definitely need private investors and trade partners in America and also in Africa, so that we can continue to have a dialogue and, create a great global economic policy debate, basically, on Africa's role in the global economic development. And once we do that, it in turn thus helping Africatown to grow, because Africatown is Africa and Africa is Africatown.
All right, and we're going to bring up a bulletin board here in case someone wants additional information about Africatown. And of course, this organization making some big strides and planning to do some even bigger strides in the future with the Alabama-Benin Trade Forum, as she said, bringing Africa to us and us going to Africa in many ways. And so that's awesome. Closing remarks,
Well,
McKinney?
my last remark would be, it's a bye-bye song. It's called Tumbamile, Tumbamile Oba, Tumbamile, Tumbamile Oba, Tumbamile, oh, Tumbamile, Tumbamile. Bye-bye. I enjoyed you. Peace.
That's what that meant. Bless you. Bless you.
Well, I'd like to just say, with the economic piece and all that we're working on, put in your plans to visit Africa.
And there you have
and
it.
you will be a changed person.
I love it a lot. And you, Dr. Ingram, last remark, 20 seconds.
I just want to say, Dee Dee, it is a pleasure. It has been a pleasure to be on the Aware Show, and we just thank you so much for inviting us.
We're so glad that you could be here. Sorry you couldn't be on the set. Maybe next time. We thank you for joining us by telephone. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Makinde, as always.
Thank you for having us.
We want to thank you all, and we hope to see some of your plans and your unearthing of our rich history and culture and the African American community to come in the future. Like many other stories in the African American community, oftentimes the history has been either lost, stolen, destroyed, altered, erased, or ignored. The strength of the courageous survivors of the Clotilda live on in all of those who are working to preserve the history, heritage, and culture in Mobile and with our sister nation, Benin, Africa. The last known survivor of the Clotilda, Cudjo Lewis, once described a joyous moment in his life when the Confederates fled Mobile in April of 1865. And in his own words, he said this: "After they free us, you understand me? We so glad we made the drum beat like we were on our own African soil." Well, the United Nations used this account in 2009 to commemorate the victims of the transatlantic slavery to illustrate a moment of Africans claiming their freedom. Well, Aware is using those words of Cudjo Lewis to actually pay tribute to the history and legacy that they left behind. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. You can also join us at WSRE.org/aware. We're also on YouTube. Until next time, I'm Dee Dee Sharp saying, stay informed and stay aware.